like to return then to my plenary themes. And what I would like to do then for the remaining two short films of this plenary is first just to talk about El Cid in the context of the epic poem, and secondly to talk about El Cid as he became an icon. So to talk about those elements of layering, if you like, which I referred to in the context of iconicity, what those might have been, and how they survive today, and then how they relate back to the figure of Rodrigo Díaz de Vivar as historical character. I've already mentioned these in the previous film, so I'll just talk a little bit about the epic poem itself. As you can see, the numbers in brackets are line numbers. The poem itself runs to 3,735 lines of verse. As I mentioned to you previously, that is not really poetry, it's a song, because this is a very lengthy song. It's an epic tale of a hero. It's the epic tale of a hero who is our hero, I suppose. That is the context in which the epic song, the Cantar de Mio Cid, was composed. I alluded to the fact beforehand that it's not entirely clear by whom it might have been composed. We know that the story, the song, uh, traveled around, was changed, was altered by word of mouth. In other words, these are tales of the recent Castilian past, heroic example from the recent Castilian past, which are designed to show us, the Castilians in the 13th century, or whenever we are listening to this song, who we are, to provide a stirring tale of an iconic figure, a heroic figure from our past. And eventually, as I mentioned last week, it comes to be written down. And that is the text that we have in 3,735 lines of what looks to us like verse. And you can see in the manuscript images and in the digital edition, which I pointed out to you last week. Just to say again, there are three cantares. The first cantar is just over 1,000 lines, 1,084 lines of text. This is the first section of the poem. The song tells the story of the Cid's exile. Right at the very beginning, it's a description also of his family at the beginning. So he is a hero who has human elements. He is recognizable to us. The first cantar shows his military prowess. He has a gradually increasing band of men who, drawn by his tales of honor and military prowess, eventually go to comprise a substantial army. And this first cantar, therefore, is the beginning of a return to honor. He acquires his own honor through his military strength, and as a result of that, gains significant wealth. The second cantar, as you can see, it's just over 1,000 lines long. It continues the military conquest and reaches, I suppose, its high point with the conquest of Valencia. News of the Cid's successes is transmitted back to King Alfonso, who had exiled him back in Castile. The Cid is thoroughly generous with what he has acquired. He keeps sending presents back to Alfonso. And in the middle of the cantar, he is taken back into favor by the king, who then arranges the marriage of his two daughters to Leonese nobles at court. By the end of the second cantar, then, he has great fame, honor. He is the military commander of Valencia, and his daughters are married to significant figures of the nobility in Leon, although not to his particular personal pleasure. The third cantar, then, the denouement, these are cantares, roughly speaking, as you can see, this one is slightly longer, roughly speaking, of 1,000 lines, and you can imagine how long it takes to sing 1,000 lines, which is why we might have cantares in the first instance. This again is a tale of military gain and conquest. He holds Valencia against constant incursions and invasions from various Islamic polities. His daughters are dishonored by their husbands, which is an episode which we will see in the seminar, and he returns to Castile to demand justice for his daughters. So, where previously the victory was a military one, now at the end of Cantar, the third Cantar, his victory is a legal one. And that is an important distinction, I think, because it tells you something about the society in which all of this is based. You can see there is an interest in wealth, in money, there is an interest in military conquest, but there is also an interest in justice, and it is not some kind of divine justice, but a justice expressed in the law of the time. Well, just to resume all of that story, there are two main plots running through this. As I said before, there's a historical character, description of his exile, and the conquest of Valencia. These things happen. And we know that this was a historical, he was a historical character, and many of these things happened to him, although, of course, the way they are depicted in the epic may not be the way in which these things actually took place. And then there's a second plot, which is from the middle of the second cantar, this fictional character who is an epic hero we can all look up to, who redeems himself and regains his honor, this time through the law. So the whole plot with his daughters, for example, is entirely fictional. So you might ask yourself why these things would be put together in this way, and what form of iconicity results. What is it that we are being asked to believe? What is, or more importantly, perhaps, what is it that we are being asked to believe in? What kind of icon is being presented to our 12th and 13th century Castilians listening to this tale being sung? So just to sum all of this up, I would say that we have a tale of El Cid as military hero, which you can see again, as always, in all those equestrian statues which appeared across Spain in the Franco period. We have a character who is the epitome of loyalty. Running all the way through this, there are epithets about El Cid, one of which is right at the very beginning. One of these is loyal men, or one of the people in the street, in fact, in Burgos says, Dios que buen vasallo, que hubiese buen señor. That is to say, what a wonderful vassal he is, if only his lord was as good as him. He is loyal to a fault to the king who has exiled him. So we are being, amongst the various things that are being depicted here, one is the necessity of loyalty. And so we have loyalty as part of the iconicity of El Cid. Something else we have, I mentioned his family. His family are present right at the beginning. He has a wife and two daughters. They are remaining behind in Castile when he goes into exile. There is an emotional bond between them, which might seem rather rare in a tale of military daring do. You don't get this kind of thing in epic tales very often. So here we have not alone the epitome of honor and loyalty, but we also have the epitome of human characteristics. There is an emotional moment when they are forced to separate, and there is equal emotion when they eventually reunite in Valencia. And his family links are seen to be, emotional links of various types, are seen to be very important. And the final 2 points, as you see in front of you, we have a constant interest in wealth, but also in honor. These contribute to the creation of our epic hero, who is the iconic epic hero in a variety of ways that we have spoken about iconicity. But there is also an emphasis both on justice, but perhaps even more importantly, on the law. So this is not a revolutionary society, nor is it one in which violence and military prowess is the only means of acquiring status. It is perhaps, you might say, a conservative society, but it is certainly one in which there are possibilities for those who are the iconic figures. Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar himself was a member of the low nobility. He was not one of the great noble families of Spain, and he rises to greatness through all of these things, not just through military strength, but through his scrupulous adherence to the law, to his loyalty, to his acquisition of honor in a variety of different ways. The epic poem, therefore, depicts an icon to us who is, of course, impossible. We cannot be like that. But it portrays to us someone who is perhaps the epitome of all that is good about our society and someone to whom we should aspire. Just to say at the end, of course, there's a whole host of other elements, some of which I've already mentioned. There are gender anxieties with the epic hero as well. The insistence on a variety of phallic symbols, and draw your attention to a couple of them that are in the statue, says something, I think, about a particular form of gender anxieties, but many of the symbolic presentations that we have are to do with manhood, beard, swords, horses. Um, that tells us something, I think, about the nature of the icon, but it perhaps tells us also something about the anxieties, the threats that that icon may suffer, and the threats that therefore our society, as incarnated in this icon, may also suffer.